Okay, so it's time we talked. I've had lots and lots of people commenting on the videos of the E300 scooters, and unfortunately, due to my account not having enough subscribers, this, that and the other that YouTube put in place, I can't do a live questions and answers, which is what I wanted to do. But I thought if I made a video and I go through some of the points that have been raised in the comments, then it might answer a few questions and everyone's going to be happy, okay? I do get asked the same type of things over and over again, and there are some bits of information that are slightly confusing when it comes to building a modded scooter. So I'm going to go through a few items and try and help you decide where you want to go with your build and how you want to put it together. Okay, so I'm not an expert in everything to do with motors or everything to do with electric scooters, but I have been working with the E300 as a base platform for building a scooter, and I ride it every day and I'm still modifying it. So I've got quite a lot of experience on my build. So using that information, I'm going to try and help you along. Now, I was trying to think, what are the things we want from an electric scooter? Well, we want fun, okay? We want speed. We maybe want distance, we definitely want reliability and safety. So with these things in mind, we've got some different options that will help us achieve these goals, and you've got to kind of decide where you're going with it. Now, there are a few things that will differ from one to the other. So if you pick speed as your set goal, distance is going to be reduced. Okay, there are factors involved. Okay, if you get a bigger motor, it takes more juice to run it, therefore said battery will last less than a scooter that uses a smaller motor and just tootles along. So you have to think about these things before you go into your build. Now, yes, if you want speed, motors are important. Now, there are a couple different motors that are very easily fitted to the E300. There is the standard 250 watt 24 volt motor, and we'll come back to the voltage of the motors a bit later on, because it's a really important factor in getting your scooter from being a standard slug that they were up to something that's a little bit more fun to ride. We're looking for the performance of a high-end electric scooter like a boosted rev, but for far less money, and it is achievable. Yes, it won't be quite as refined, but it'll still do the same job. Now, with the motors, if you run a 24 volt motor at 250 watts at 24 volts with a standard battery, it is only ever going to hit the maximum output for that motor, which let's just say is 2000 RPM. Okay, so that scooter is then set to that. We could look at changing the batteries in it to something that will give it more voltage. So instead of 24 volts, go to 36, like in my build, which gives 50% more voltage to that motor. And what happens is that 24 volt motor gives you more output because you're giving it more voltage. Now, there are downsides to this as well as upsides. Upsides, you get more speed, you get more revolutions per minute, RPM. Okay, your scooter goes faster. Downsides, you are going to put strain on that motor that it was not really designed to do, and there are limits to where these motors can go to before they start to get warm and then hot and then fail, and then, you know, fiery death happens. But we don't have to get to that point, and there are ways that you can use a 24 volt motor and get good performance and longevity and reliability. My own scooter has gone through 3 different phases. I've gone from the standard 250 watt motor, and I used the 24 volt system. Then I went up to a 36 with a 2 battery system. Then I went to a 36 with a 3 battery system, and then I had a failure. The motor couldn't take the amps, which is the amount of output that your batteries will give at peak, running through it, and basically it was too much. It cooked the motor. It still works, but it was very down on performance, and we don't want that happening. I then moved back to a 2 battery system with the 250 watt motor, and it runs fine, brilliant, great speed, good distance, but I wanted a bit more, so I went up to a 350 watt ZY1060. Now this doesn't fit in the standard orientation, you have to mount it from underneath, but it's got 150 watts more pulling power and could handle having the third battery on, but it was warm. I say warm, it gets hot. Okay, so that's something you have to deal with. Now we're going to come back to that in a bit. And then my final iteration of my scooter, which is the one I'm currently running, is a 500 watt motor in the standard size fitting, so it goes in exactly the same way as a standard motor, which makes it really easy to fit. But this one is 500 watts and can take 28 amps from your batteries. So as long as your batteries are not putting out more than 28 amps at peak, it will not fall foul to the overheating and burning out that my other motors have happened on the 3 battery system. So now I can use 3 batteries and I've got more torque, but I'm also got more distance. Now the 2 battery system, using it for daily commuting on short rides, is absolutely fine. I can probably get 2-3 days out of the commutes that I was using it for and then charge it up. With the 500 watt motor I haven't had a chance to do that yet, and just because it says 500 watts, remember this is pulling power, this doesn't mean speed. So actually the 500 watt motor that I've got, which I will get you the model number for and put it on the screen, actually has a slower RPM than the 350 watt motor, the ZY 1060. So if you're looking for something that's fast, go 350. ZY 1060 motor with standard gearing will get you 25 to 27 miles per hour. With the 500 watt motor, I'm only getting 24 miles an hour, but it gets there quicker and it's not pulling as much from the battery because it's a stronger motor. It doesn't need as much to get me going. I weigh about 70 kilos. Okay, so I'm not that heavy. So yeah, thinking about which motor you're going to use is really important. The good thing is the motors don't cost that much money, so if you've got a couple of options you can always switch between them. But for the moment I'm going to test mine with the 500 watt 260 RPM motor, which takes 28 amps peak, and I'm running it with a 3 battery system. So which batteries should you use? Now I can't really speak from experience of any other batteries apart from the ones that I have used. So I've used the original 24 volt system, which is 2 12 volt lead acid batteries, which are huge in size and they are heavy, which is obviously going to reduce your speed. But they do have longevity, so you can go quite a long distance on them. I am using 36 volt hoverboard batteries, which are 10S2P, and they give 36 volts with 4.4 amp hours of power, which is not too bad. Okay, so hoverboard batteries. Why, I hear some of you cry. Well, they're 36 volts. They're lithium celled and the output's alright. They're 4.4 amp hours per unit. So if you think a standard Razor is about 7 amp hours in its battery supply, how long it can last. Now the good thing about the hoverboard batteries is, although they're lithium, you don't need to mess around with sorting out BMS and things like that, because they've already got that already built in to the pack, and they run with an XT60 connector. So the advantage of this is if you put a voltage into them, they take a charge, and they've got battery management built in, so you don't need to go doing that yourself. Now I've built batteries, lithium cells, and they are a pain in the ass. They're dangerous, and if you don't do the BMSs right, you will end up with a fire on your hands, and these things go into what's called thermal runaway, and it becomes chain reaction, one battery after another, and they are nasty. So there's no point dealing with that. These packs, as I say, they're 10 cells, they're 42 volts, and they run for we call it a 36 volt cell. Okay, now don't buy cheap. Yeah, you can get them on eBay. That's great. That's where I get mine from. They're about £44, £45 a unit. If you're buying them any cheaper than that, they're either really low grade cells, or there'll be duff cells in there just making up the weight. You need to spend the money on your batteries because it's going to give you the performance that you want. And the lithiums, compared to lead acid, it's all about punch. It's about how much it can give to your motor when it needs it most, and that's what will really make the difference. So yeah, they've got a BMS, so they're easy to charge, and you can charge them off a pretty standard system. So you can use the original charging ports, no extras. They're punchy. They're pretty small. You can fit 3 inside of an E300, but I would advise, if you're just starting out, 2 is a really good number. It gives you loads of space to work and you're not cramming everything in. 3 is tight, okay? Yeah, I found them to be pretty reliable, but don't go cheap. I know there'll be that side of you that says, oh, they're 10 quid less. There's a reason for that. They will be shocking, okay? Shocking. Battery joke. How do I know this? Because I went cheap on one of my battery packs and it's awful. The voltage goes up and down, it's not reliable, it doesn't charge to full, okay? It is cheap copies and they are crap. Sorry to use the foul language of the C word there. So don't buy cheap. They're the most important part of your build. Go for a hoverboard battery. It's self-contained, 36 volts, and parallel them up so that you've got the 2 batteries working together with their positives both going to one positive connector and the negatives going to another negative connector, and then that goes into your ECU, giving you 2 power packs providing 36 volts only. It doesn't double the voltage, it's working together, okay, to have a bigger 36 volt battery than the individual cells themselves, okay? So really important, don't go cheap on your batteries. You won't get any problems with things that have got BMSs already built in. The battery management system will sort everything out for you, okay? It will keep them balanced and it will allow you to charge them easily without an external charger. Tim, can I use other batteries? Yes, you can use other batteries, but if you ask me a question about which battery should you get, and you don't choose the ones I've already used, I can't really give you advice on it. I can't really give you a recommendation on which one to go for because I haven't had a chance to try them. There are, I'm sure, really good batteries out there, but you need to get that information from somebody that's already used them so it's reliable. So I can only sort of recommend the ones that I'm using, and they've been pretty good, okay? So that's the Hoverboard batteries. But yeah, there are lots and lots of different lithium battery types out there, but don't go cheap. If anyone wants to recommend me a really good battery with a BMS system built in, let me know. I'd be interested to find out. Maybe there's something better than what I'm using out there. Leave me a note in the comments. This is a biggie, get this a lot. Tim, I've got a 350 watt motor. And I'm like, fantastic. It's 36 volts. Is this going to be okay? Yes, it is. It will work. But you're only ever going to get the RPM stated on the motor. So if that motor says 2000 RPM, that's it. You're not going to get any performance gain by putting a 36 volt battery with a 36 volt motor. All the motors I use are 24 volts, and I add 36 volts as their power supply, overvolting them, and that's a common term that I use, overvolting them so that it gives them 50% more voltage and increases their maximum output, okay? And on the lower spec motors like the MY 1060, you will see a noticeable improvement in performance. We're talking 15 miles an hour to 21 miles an hour, okay? If you run a 36 volt motor with a 36 volt battery, you are going to get the stock rotation of that motor speed. That will be the top RPM, that's it, okay? So if you want to go fast overvolting, you have to go on a 24 volt system with higher battery output, but not so high that you burn it out. Motors again, ampage. So if you've got a motor that's got a 12 amp maximum, if you put more than 12 amps into that motor, you are going to start to fry it. So look for the motors that have got the highest amp rating on them. As I say, my 500 watt motor is a 28 amp. My batteries will not put out 28 amps, so therefore it is not going to get hot. It's only going to get slightly warm under normal running conditions, okay? But watch out for overloading that motor by giving it too many amps, more than it's stated on the motor itself. One I get asked a lot, do I wear a helmet? Yes, I do, all the time, without fail. I do not get on that thing unless I've got a helmet on. They travel as fast as, you know, a 50cc scooter. You're transversing over bumpy terrain, you've got little wheels. So yeah, wear a helmet, don't be caught out, and give way to pedestrians. You know, we're trying to give scooters a good name. Like in the UK here, people are really against them for some reason, but they could be a really good form of isolated travel, and they're better for the environment. And I love commuting online. So yeah, give way to pedestrians, don't use major junctions, you know, get off when you're crossing on zebra crossings, things like that. It's just about being a courteous rider, really. And I would never get on my motorcycle without putting a crash helmet on, so why am I getting on this thing without a helmet? You know, it just makes sense. Protect yourself and get used to doing it. It becomes a real easy habit, and just hang your helmet on your, you know, handlebars so they're always ready when you need it. Should you keep your motor connectors standard on an E300? No, you shouldn't. If you're running anything more than standard voltage, standard batteries, you need to upgrade those. I recommend going to like an XT60 connector or XT90. That'll take a lot higher ampage and won't melt. You put a 350 watt motor on there with 36 volt batteries and an 800 watt controller like I've got, and it'll melt that plastic in the first 2 minutes, okay? So put decent connectors on, and also you'll be flowing your energy from your battery to your motor so much easier with less resistance by using decent connectors. They take a time to get used to soldering, but they're worth doing, okay? Do your electrics, isolate everything properly and insulate it so you're not going to get any shorts. Again, you're riding on lithium cells, they are bombs, okay? Do not be caught out by poor wiring. If you get caught out and you're not sure what you're doing, why not give me a buzz? I've built a few of these things for other people now. If you're in the UK, ship it to me. I'll put it together for you. You'll go from 12 miles an hour to 25, 27 miles an hour, and you've got a nicely built scooter. I'm more than happy to do that, and there are a few people that have done it with me already. Ways to make your motor last longer, okay? Duration of your motor that you spent good money on is down to a few things. It's not bashing it about, obviously, is one of them. How you've installed it so that it's connected correctly and it's not vibrating all over the place. Cooling is really important. If you're running an overvolt system, you're going to get more heat. So what I recommend is using heat sinks, aluminium heat sinks, and putting those on your motor so that you're pulling the heat away from the motor, and then the airflow of you riding along will dissipate it. Okay, and it will really dramatically cool your motor and make it last a lot longer. I recommend a 60mm square aluminium heatsink. I'll put some links in the description. What you do is you score lines along the back of it, and then once you've scored deep lines into the back of it, you can bend it so that instead of being a flat square, it curves to the shape of your motor. Then just super glue the back of it into place and a metal cable tie around the motor, and then you'll be transferring heat away from your motor into the heatsink, and then the air comes through it and it takes that heat away, cooling the heatsink down. Now you'll stop and you'll put your hand on the heatsink and you'll be like, oh, it's cold, it's not really working. But if you left that scooter standing with no airflow, the heat build-up would then come through the heatsink and you'll realise just how hot it is. I also use them on my charger system so that it cools down my charger, and I'll put some pictures up so you can see what I've done. So what are the other options for cooling your motor? Well, you could undo the 4 Phillips head bolts and take the sprocket off the front plate of your motor, like this one. And on the back, it's set up like a little pizza, and you'll notice there's little circles where it was obviously cast. You could take a 6mm drill bit and just drill some vent holes. That would really increase the amount of cooling that your motor's getting, allowing the heat to travel out through the casing very, very easily. Unfortunately, this reduces how watertight your motor is, so that has to be taken into account. Okay, so motor information. MY1016 about 25 quid, 250 watts. This is the original size motor that goes in your E300. Torque, you're looking about 0.8 of a Newton meter, so it's not pulling great, but it will pull better with overvolting. It takes up to 2,750 RPM as its top speed. Okay, once you put extra current on there, okay, you overvolt it, you'll get a bit more out of it. Okay, the rated current on this that it can take is 13.5 amps. So if your batteries put out more than that, you will toast the motor. So hence why I'm saying 2 hoverboard batteries on a 250 watt works fine, doesn't overheat it. Okay, but add some cooling of some description just in case. It doesn't hurt, really cheap to do. Then you've got the ZY1016 16. That's about £30 at 350 watts, so they've got a bit more torque. Okay, I haven't got the torque rating unfortunately for that. 2,750 RPM again, but a higher ampage rating. They can take 18.7, so then you could start using your 3 battery packs with that type of motor. And finally, you have got the 500 watt that can fit in the original mounting on the top rather than underneath like the 350, and that is the XYD 6B2. It's a Curie motor, and it can take 22 amps, and actually on mine it says 28 amps, so it'll easily take the 3 battery system. But again, I'm using passive cooling fins, the heat sink on it, so that it's taking out some of that heat from the motor. Although it's 500 watts, the RPM top speed is only 2,600. So that's something to take into consideration. Bigger wattage doesn't necessarily mean a faster scooter. Okay, so you could go for the 350, you will have a quicker scooter because it's got more RPM that motor can give out. This motor is quite tight, so it's torquey, but it doesn't give you the highest top speed. Okay, so just take that into consideration. I actually get lower top speed, but I've got more torque. Okay, so there you go. Those are the 3 motors that I recommend. You've got the standard, the 350, which is very capable, and then the 500, which is hard to get hold of and a little bit more expensive, that is actually slower. Okay, so take that into consideration. I'm wondering what type of battery length I'm going to get out of the 500, but I haven't had a chance to test it yet, so I'll keep you updated. I hope this has been helpful. Let me know what you think, okay? And if you have any more questions, put them in the comments and I'll try and do another video. Thanks very much.